2020 was not that great of a year, all things considered, but in terms of video games, I'd say it was actually a pretty decent year, with some highly anticipated games coming out, and new consoles coming out, and even some games of beloved old series being remade coming out. I'd say it was a pretty damn good year in terms of video games. Hello everyone, Kingdom Kid here with my top 10 games of 2020. Now, if you're unfamiliar with how I do this, here are a few things that I usually consider when to be considered to be a part of my top 10 games here. 1. Obviously, the game had to have come out in 2020. 2. I had to have beaten the game. So I had to start the game and end the game. I had to see the credits of this game. That would be considered for this list. 3. Games such as remakes and remasters would not be a part of this list. So unfortunately, games like Persona 5 Royal and Final Fantasy VII Remake will not be a part of this list. I mean, obviously because remake is in the name. I usually do this because they're technically games that have come out in the past, and especially with Persona 5 Royal, while it does expand a lot on the original Persona 5, it's more like a definitive edition version of that game. So, without further ado, here are my top 10 games of 2020. Number 10, Animal Crossing New Horizons. This being my first Animal Crossing game, I was honestly pleasantly surprised with it. I only knew a little bit about Animal Crossing just from, word of mouth and other people online of how they've enjoyed past Animal Crossing games. So this being my first Animal Crossing game, I was honestly pleasantly surprised. You go to a tropical island and you make it your own home. And you start off with 2 villagers, and then you can honestly build to get more villagers. And honestly, that's pretty fun. The goal is to get it to be at least a 3-star island, so then you can start having KK Slider showing up every Saturday. Unfortunately, this game is at the bottom of my list because once you get to KK Slider, there's honestly really nothing else for you to do. Now, granted, if you have an imagination, you can honestly build and make it however you want. And granted, I've had some ideas too, but I can never really get them to go through. Though this game is fun, I would say it kind of gets a little lackluster eventually. Though it does have some interesting things going on when it's close to a holiday or when a season changes. I'm not saying this is a bad game at all, but for someone like me who, not to say it's not boring, but it does kind of get to the point where it's like, oh, I'm just logging in just so I can have it count as okay, I logged in so I can get the Nook Miles thing for it to be checking in for 360 days or whatever the thing is. Again, there's nothing wrong with this game, and if you enjoy it and you have fun with it, go for it. I still have fun in it too, even though when I check it in, it's really a pain in the ass with these snowmen around, but still, for me, this is why this game's at number 10, is because though it is pretty fun, once you get KK Slider, the goal kind of doesn't really fit anymore. Though you could try to get a 5-star, which I've always been pretty close to, but I've never quite gotten it. But since once you get KK, that's kind of like when you start seeing the credits, and so that's technically quote-unquote beating the game for this criteria. So while I did enjoy this game a lot, it did eventually start to fall flat for me. And again, nothing wrong if you're still enjoying this game. Good on you for still enjoying this game. But for me, this is why Animal Crossing New Horizons is my number 10 for games of 2020. Number 9, The Last of Us Part 2. Now, before you all get on my case about this game, I want to just say some of the good things about this game. 1, it plays very similar to The Last of Us, which isn't a bad thing. I honestly really like the combat and the playstyle of The Last of Us. Number 2, it has probably one of, if not the best accessibility for people with disabilities this year. This is probably the best game to have come out with the most and best accessibility for people who has disabilities, which is honestly a good thing in my opinion. Number 2, the voice acting and the voice characters are fantastic as always. That's one thing you can always count on with this kind of game, especially with Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker coming back as Ellie and Joel. It's fantastic. And of course, Laura Bailey being Abby, chef's kiss. It's beautiful. Now let's talk about a few things I didn't like. I honestly didn't really like the story too much. I don't think it's a bad story. It's the classic revenge story, and then at the end of it is revenge. Was it really worth it in the end? Without getting into too much spoilers, but at this point, do you really care? So Abby kills Joel within the first hour of the game. Nothing surprising. Everyone probably knows that already. The reason why she does that is because the main doctor from the first Last of Us was Abby's dad. So she found out that Joel was the one that killed him. So her story is her trying to go kill him. And she does it. So then, job well done. But because of that, Ellie saw her kill Joel. So now her story is about her trying to track down Abby and everyone else that was in that room to exact her revenge on them. So her and her friend Diana travel to Seattle, where they are most likely based at, to get their revenge at. You eventually do actually turn out to play as Ellie. Now this is something I like to, not Ellie, you play as Abby. This is actually something I liked. So you start the game playing as Ellie, then actually you start the game playing as Joel for a little bit, then you play as Ellie, then you play as Abby for a bit. So this is kind of like the prologue in a way. Once Joel is dead, you start playing as Ellie going through Seattle, which is nice. You go through Seattle, you have a 3-day event where a lot of crazy shit happens, and then it all culminates by Abby somehow finding out where you were. But then you go back in time and you play as Abby during those 3 days of Seattle, what she was up to while Ellie was having those 3 days. I honestly like that bit. And then you get to see what she was doing, and you get to like see some tie-ins every here and there. Like you hear something on Abby's side that's like, oh, that's probably what happened when we were doing this on Ellie's side. And then same thing with Ellie's side, you hear some things happening, and then you actually like get to play it out as Abby. So that's pretty fun. So then it all comes together, which actually has a nice boss fight at first, where you're playing as Abby and you're fighting Ellie. Then eventually you go on your merry way, and then eventually you're cross paths again, and this time you're playing as Ellie as a boss fight with Abby. So I want to say, while I feel like this story was not as good as the first game, I feel like this game does get too much hate, but at the same time it also gets too much praise. I say this is a pretty okay, not really down the middle, but it's a pretty decently okay game. If you're at all curious about this game at all, and if you enjoyed the first Last of Us game, whether for story or gameplay, I feel like you'll enjoy this in some shape or another. Now, just go into it with an open mind. And this is the one thing I'll say. I said this once I beat The Last of Us. This is what I said after the end of my LP of The Last of Us. If they ever make a Last of Us 2, they do not have to follow Ellie and Joel. They did not have to follow Ellie and Joel for this. They could have honestly had done anyone. That's the one thing that people need to understand. When you make a world, an apocalyptic world like this, where the fan shit's out of control, you do not have to keep following the same people. You can follow whoever. You can start making backstories for other people. You can start people where they are currently now too, or where they were in the past. I don't mind you like maybe crossing paths with them at some point. Maybe they play a factor into one chapter or one section of the game, but don't let them be the focus. If they do make a Last of Us 3, which who knows if they will, I don't know, they do not, and they should not, follow Ellie, and maybe not follow Abby either. Although I honestly did end up liking Abby once I was like halfway through her second day of Seattle. I started actually kind of like, okay, she's not a bad character. Like I said, this kind of world does not need to keep following the same kind of people. They can follow whoever they want. They can make different people from anywhere and make the story make sense. So while this game did get a lot of bad controversy, bad press from majority of people online that I've seen, a lot of people still did enjoy this game. And although a lot of people said the Game Awards were rigged when it won a lot of rewards, I will say it should not have won Best Narrative. 13 Sentinels definitely should have won that one. But I digress. This game was still pretty decently fun, in my opinion. Although, like I said, it gets too much praise and too much hate. But that's why it is my number 9 in my top 10 games of 2020. Number 8, Doom Eternal. I honestly really like this game a lot, and as someone who also played Doom 2016, which is the first game in this kind of series, I honestly like Doom Eternal a lot better. More so because it was easier to get all the collectibles, and I love the fact that when you get close to the end of a level in Doom Eternal, they'll give you a chance to teleport to any portion of the level, so you can pick up some collectible that you might have missed along the way. I honestly loved that. This was a fun game. Nice rip and tear. The story, there actually being a story, was decently okay in my opinion. And I actually really liked how this game played. It did have some, similarly along with Doom 2016, I honestly liked it a few times here and there. But for me, I'd say this was a big big improvement. Now, as someone who's not really good at first-person shooters, or honestly, this is my first time ever being exposed to Doom, was playing these games, I have to say they're pretty fun, especially for someone like me. And like I said, the differences that they made in Doom Eternal are fantastic. Like I said, them adding the checkpoints, like, hey, when you go to the... And I love how they do it too. It's like, hey, if you go to this next thing, you basically are done with the level. So if you want to go back and pick up any past collectibles you might miss, now's their chance to do it. I honestly like that a bit. And the collectibles are so much easier to get to along the way, especially all the guns, which are always fun to play with. I love the shotgun a lot, and this pulse rifle were probably my two favorite guns to play as. In terms of the difficulty, though, you don't really need to play it at a high difficulty. I played it at, like, I think medium difficulty for a majority of the game, but then at some point when I was like maybe 1/3 left of the game, I decided to say fuck it and just put on lower difficulty just so I can like beat this game within amount of time for it to be a part of this list. And I honestly liked it. And like I said, the story was actually a nice touch to this too. So the improvements they did, I'd say this was definitely a better version. And I might honestly check out the DLC at some point. I haven't picked that up yet, but we'll see. I might check that out. So Doom Eternal definitely deserves to be in anyone's top 10 games of 2020. And that's why it's my number 8 of my top 10 games of 2020. Number 7, Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memories. I love this game a lot. I'm not that big into rhythm-based combat games, but I love the Persona 4 dancing games, Persona 5 dancing game, Persona 3 dancing game. I love those games a lot. And with a game like Kingdom Hearts, you knew at some point there was going to be a game like this, because the music in Kingdom Hearts is fantastic. It has a lot of tracks, although I feel like it is missing quite a lot of tracks too. And it would be lovely if they added some tracks, though I don't think they will. And the little bit of story that gets in here is fantastic as well. This is honestly a good recap of the series of a whole, in a way, as told through the eyes of Kairi, which is lovely. And then at the end, you get like a good, maybe like a good 30 minutes of new content, depends on, and it's really good. Honestly, I do at some point want to make a video about this game, of how it's a perfect bridge to be from the end of the first series to the beginning of the next saga. So from the Dark Seeker saga to whatever this next saga is going to be called, this is the perfect bridge game for that. So if you're new to Kingdom Hearts series, I would say maybe pick this game up if you're at all familiar with rhythm-based combat games. This is a fun game. And the music is phenomenal. I'll say that again. There's honestly a few tracks in here I was pleasantly surprised with. There was Circle of Life, Whole New World was added here, and some other tracks too that I was like, wow, this is a good track. Honestly, this game is fun as hell, and I'm having a blast playing through it. And I'm trying my damnedest to try to 100% this game. It's a long haul, especially since you have to play all tracks on every single difficulty. It's a long haul, but it's well worth it in my opinion. And like I said, the music makes it worth it, and it's fun, and it's honestly an enjoyable time. And with you being able to pick between different characters, not that it really changes the combat or anything, you have different teams. You have Sora, Donald, and Goofy as a team, Roxas, Xion, and Axel as a team, Aqua, Ventus, and Terra as a team, and Riku with the Komori Bat and the Meow Wow Dream Eaters as a team. It's honestly fun. And I've had a blast playing this game. And honestly, if you're a fan of Kingdom Hearts, if you're a fan of the music, play the demo. There should still be a demo available out there so you can play it up. And hey, a good news is too that this is the first time that Kingdom Hearts was ever on the Switch. So hey, there you go right there. And if you ever want to play it on the Switch, there you go. I haven't really played it too much online stuff, but the online was honestly pretty fun on the PS4 version. I don't know how it plays on the Switch because I haven't played it on the Switch. But hey, I did have a blast with it, and I hope everyone else did too. So that's why it's my number 7 of top 10 games of 2020. Number 6, Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. And boy howdy, they love to have these little puns. Though I won't really say it's a pun, but them titling this game It's About Time is so on the nose for multiple reasons. One, the game is literally about time. It's a lot of time travel going through again. And it's about time that we actually got a proper sequel to Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped. This game is fun. You actually get to play as Coco and Crash from the beginning. And honestly, it's fun to play as both Crash and Coco. I love this game a lot, though I will say it is quite difficult. Even if you're just trying to go through the game, there are some times where it gets a little difficulty. Now add on to the whole get every single box, don't die while getting every single box, and find hidden gems and everything like that. Oh, this is a completionist nightmare. I'm going to say that right now. Like, I honestly thought Crash Bandicoot 1 would be decently hard to try to complete. While that one is, in a way, and it's more so my fault because I'm trying to complete the bonus level that got added. Same with the one in Warped, part of the Insane Trilogy. Crash Bandicoot 4 is a nightmare to complete. Add that you have to go through every single stage without dying and collecting every single box is a nightmare, because there are some stages where you're on rails and you could easily miss boxes. So if you miss even one box, you have to restart the whole level, and then add on to the long load times that it takes to load to the start of the level again. It's a nightmare. And then add on to the time trials where you have to get the platinum relics, where some of these runs are hard as hell. This game is a completionist nightmare, and I do not see myself completing this game anytime soon. And then add on that you have to get all the platinum relics, you have to get every single gem, and you have to go through the stages twice, which I'll explain in a little bit, in order to get the secret true ending, which honestly isn't really that great in my opinion. I've seen it, it's fine, but it's just a setup for the next game if they decide to do one. Now, what I mean by going through every single stage twice, eventually you'll get, after you face the second boss, you'll get notified that, like, hey, there's now inverted stages. So you have to go through every single stage twice, with each world having a different inverted characteristics to it. It could be a full dark one where it only lights up when you're spinning, some weird with it being black and white where you spin, you can splash colors. It's fine, but then again, they have their own set of gems. So they have their own different hidden gem, and then they have their own different hidden gem. You have to collect every single box, get like 80% Wumpa Fruit to get 3 gems there. So each stage has 6 gems. A hidden gem, 3 gems based on Wumpa Fruits, 1 gem for dying 3 times or less, and 1 gem for collecting all boxes. So you have to go through the whole stage like that. And then, luckily, you only need to do this for either the regular level or the inverted level. You only have to do it once. You don't have to do it both. There's an insanely perfect medal where you have to go through it by breaking every single box and without dying. So you're going to be playing through every single stage at least 3 times just to get everything on that list. Maybe even more times. Depends on how you want to do it. If you want to go through a run where you get every single gem besides the one where you don't die, then that's fine. Or you go through the stage the first time where you didn't get all the boxes and you died more once, but you got all the Wumpa Fruit and you got the hidden gem. Okay, that's one playthrough. Then you gotta play through it again by not dying and collecting all the boxes. So there's a lot of times you gotta go through this, especially in the later levels where it gets really difficult and where more on rail like parts of the level happens. And if you miss a box, you're basically done with that level. You have to restart from the beginning. Is a nightmare. I highly recommend watching Cat Icarus's video on this game. He basically sums up how I feel about this game. While I am excited to see what they do in the future for Crash, I hope they kind of dial it back a bit in terms of maybe completionist in a way if they ever do make a proper 5th game. And like me and probably a lot of people, the ability to know that there is a 4th Crash game has me hyped for the ability of a possible new Spyro game coming out in maybe 2021. Who knows? But the future is bright for everyone's favorite marsupial, and I honestly can't wait to see what happens next for Crash and honestly Spyro. But that's why I did rage at this game, but I still enjoyed it too. And that's why it's my number 6 game of top 10 games of 2020. Number 5, Spider-Man Miles Morales. Holy crap, I'll be honest, it was very hard to put this one at such a low spot, but every single game after this had a little more impact on me. Though I freaking loved Spider-Man 2018, and Miles Morales will forever be my favorite Spider-Man. This game was fantastic. It's a good follow-up to the 2018 Spider-Man game where you're playing as Miles now, and honestly, with the new abilities that he has, it is a nice new fresh coat of paint on this game. I honestly loved playing this game start to finish. I had a big smile on my face. Though there were moments where I was like, what the fuck is going on? I still enjoyed this game through the whole way through. And anyone who enjoyed the first Spider-Man game will enjoy this as well. And if you haven't played any of the Spider-Man games, I'd say this is a good game to pick up. Though it might be great to play the first game first. This game is a lot shorter than the previous one, and that's okay. I honestly hope that if they do make a Spider-Man 2, that they don't make it as long as the previous one. Now, granted, the story for that one was great, and I feel like it was a good length too. What really added on was all the added stuff, with all the bases to take over, all the collectibles to get. It added too much fluff, in my opinion, to that game. Well, this game itself had, I'd say, a good amount of base takes over. It had a total of 6, I'd say, and only had like a total of like maybe 2 or 3 collectibles that felt really good. And the rest of the collectibles were like, okay, they're just there in a way. So they weren't terrible in some ways. This game had me tearing up in more ways, more times than I can count. Maybe like a total of 5, but this game, like I said, is fantastic. The story is so good. It's a nice follow-up. And honestly, I cannot wait to see what they do for the next Spider-Man game. And honestly, I can't wait. Like, I can definitely see where they're going to go with it. I'm just kind of curious of like, how do we play? Are we going to play as Spider-Man Miles Morales? Are we going to play as Peter Parker Spider-Man, or what? Or can we flip? Can we, like, at some points in the story, can we switch between them and they each have their own little story or something? I don't know. And I'm super excited for it. So I enjoyed this game a lot, and I hope anyone who played this game did too. And that's why Spider-Man Miles Morales, you're number 5 in my top 10 games of 2020. Number 4, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Oh, this game. Talk about another game that made me cry and tear up, especially around the ending. And even like a few missions before the last mission. This game is fantastic. I will say that flat out. This game, being the first type of warrior games for me to play, I'm super excited for this. And it taking place 100 years before Breath of the Wild, that is fantastic. The story of this is phenomenal. The gameplay of it is pretty easy once you understand how to do it. And I honestly love playing as all the different characters. Though I did have some issues with some of the slow, like, moving characters, like Daruk. He was a little too slow in my opinion. And I didn't mind Rivali for the most part, but he wasn't that great to play as. And then some of the characters that unlock later down the road I have issues with too. And playing this to 100% completion, which I did, I got everything. I 100% this map. I played as all the characters. They're all have their own fun ways to play as, like I said, but I always find myself playing as Link. More so because of the Master Sword, because if you're playing as Link with the Master Sword, his attacks give a nice little, and I honestly love that too, it's a nice little touch. When your health is at full, you give a nice little air cutter type thing, that like a little projectile from your sword when you swing, so that hits enemies, and it's fantastic. I do love the combos that you can all unlock too and play as with all the different characters, and even all the different weapons that Link has too. Like, he can hold a 2-handed weapon, he can hold a spear. It's fun playing with all of them. But like I said, I always end up going back to the Master Sword just because it works so good for how I play this game. Like I said, the story for this was phenomenal. I would say this too. This is the most Zelda-focused Legend of Zelda game that I have ever played. Now, granted, I don't want to say I played them all. I have not played all of the Legend of Zelda games, but I played a fair majority of them. And I would say this is probably the most centric Zelda game ever. This is like, the story was more focused on Zelda than it was on Link, saving Hyrule. Well, it's fantastic, and I love it. If you know anything about Breath of the Wild, I'd say pick this game up. This game is fantastic. Do not worry about the gameplay at all. It's phenomenal and so easy to understand. And you can honestly put it on an easy difficulty if it's a little too much. I believe it starts off on normal, so you can change it to be on an easier difficulty if you want to. And I love this game so much. And of course, I love the little baby guardian that follows you around too. So it's a fun game. I hope anyone who plays this game enjoyed the game too. And I honestly will say this, go for 100% completion. It's definitely a time consuming thing, but it's well worth it in the end to try to unlock everything. Get that whole map 100% completion, and you get a nice little costume for Link at the end of it, and it's fun. So that's why, I'll be honest, this game was definitely a little higher on the list beforehand, but where it is right now, I'm happy with it too. So that's why it's my number 4 game of 2020. Number 3, Ghost of Tsushima. Holy crap, this game is amazing. You are flat out playing a samurai movie, and I love it. This game, from the beautiful visuals, the beautiful lighting, and everything about this game is beautiful. Even the voice acting. You can play it in English or Japanese, and I'd say both are very, very good. I love this game so much. I do, however, feel like this game kind of got forgotten after the month it came out. Though that is quite a shame. Though a lot of people did like this game. It did win, I think, Gamers Game of the Year or whatever it was that it won at the Game Awards. I still think this game is thoroughly enjoyable. I honestly say, like, this game, while it had elements from Assassin's Creed in it, it felt good. It didn't feel like there was so much in this, like the Assassin's Creed Valhalla does this year, and even Cyberpunk 2077. Those two games feel like there's too much going on that you can do. While this game, I feel like, had the right amount of side stuff, right amount of collectibles, right amount of everything for you to get. This game is fun. You play as Jin Sakai, who's trying to save his uncle and then try to save his land. It's from the invading Mongols. It's a fantastic game. One, I feel like, is very well worth playing. I honestly haven't even touched this game since I platinumed it. I have no idea how the multiplayer works. I've heard it's pretty good. I might check that out one of these days. But even the story aspect of this game, along with God of War 2018, have really shown that people are not sick and tired of single-player games. This game alone proves that because it's so beautifully stunning. Even that opening scene where you're riding the horse and then you see the tile come across, that right there is just one of the best scenes of video games that's happened this year. And honestly, I can't wait to see what Sucker Punch has next. I don't know how they will do a sequel to this game or a follow-up to this game in any shape or form. Honestly, they don't even have to if they really don't want to. But this game is fantastic. I cannot wait to see what Sucker Punch has next. This game is fantastic. And of course, I loved every single time you go into Hot Spring because you get to see Jin Butt. It's fantastic. It's one of the things I love the most about this game was such the details of that. And everything else about this game, all the collectibles, all the characters you meet, even though the sub-stories of each character was phenomenal in its way. And obviously, I will always say the best one was with his grandmother or his handmaid, whatever her name was. It's been a while. I can't remember her name, and I apologize. It's such a shame. That's the best side character stories that this game had. And honestly, this game was phenomenal. I'd say it was hard to decide if this should have been my number 2 or number 3, but what my number 2 was, it definitely earns that. But that's why it's still my number 3 of top 10 games of 2020. Number 2, Yakuza Like a Dragon. Oh, this game, I just barely beat it within the time period. Honestly, actually, there was a little more time. I beat it within 2 days left of the year. But this game, holy crap, what can I say about this game that honestly has not been said? I honestly say it would probably be one of the best Yakuza games I have ever played. As someone who's played majority of them, I still need to beat Yakuza 3 and 4. This game is definitely so good. From the new characters of Ichiban Kasuga, Namba, Adachi, Sayako, all the characters that you meet are all lovable. Even the bad guys, you eventually get to sympathize with them, which is honestly on point with Yakuza games. They do have a point where it's like, oh my, you feel for this character. Although there are some characters in here that you're like, no, I'll never like you. And boy, howdy, there is a character that you will not like whatsoever. Without spoiling this game. This game's fantastic. I love how it starts. This is Yakuza 7, so this is definitely a new Yakuza game. If you're familiar with the Yakuza game series at all, you'll know the game's play styles is more like beat 'em up in a way, of real-time beat 'em ups in a way, while this one it takes a different turn and becomes an RPG style like combat. Honestly, this was an April Fool's joke turned into a real game, and honestly, I'm glad that they did this. I love this game a lot. It's a good follow-up to the Kazuma Kiryu story that Yakuza had beforehand, and I honestly cannot wait to see what the future holds for Yakuza 8. And if you're not a big fan of it, that's fine. If you're more so the old traditional Yakuza games gameplay style, if they continue on with Judgment, which I'm pretty sure they will, Judgment still followed the old gameplay style of Yakuza, and I would say that's a good place too. Would I recommend this being a good starting point for Yakuza? No, because this game will flat out spoil everything that has come out before it. This game will flat out spoil Yakuza 0 through 6. So if you're at all curious about the previous Yakuza games, you can either watch a compressed video of all the cutscenes in it, or play Judgment. Play Judgment to get a feel for the old Yakuza games. This game, like I said, this is more like Dragon Quest. Hell, they mention it. Ichiban mentions it within like the first 30 minutes of the game that Dragon Quest is his favorite game, and that's how he always does his fighting. And that's what it is. It's a turn-based RPG style, and I love this game so much. This game had me crying at the end of it, and I think the last time the Yakuza game did that was when I played 6 made me cry and 0 made me cry. 5 made me tear up, and 1 and 2, like, the Yakuza games make me tear up at least, and Judgment made me tear up. Like these games are very emotional and very hard hitting, and they're fantastic. I highly recommend picking this game up if you are at all familiar with the Yakuza series. But again, if you are new to the Yakuza series, I can't really say this is a good starting point. As like I said, it will spoil everything that came out before it, except for Judgment. Judgment, like I said, it's its own thing. It's still a good game. It's a fantastic game, and honestly, this is probably the best RPG that came out this year. I loved it so much. Well, I don't want to say the best, because, I mean, like I said, Persona 5 Royal is still a good game, but this is a fantastic, quote-unquote, new game to come out. I love this game so a lot. And I haven't even talked about the voice acting. This game has English voice acting too, just like Judgment, while the past Yakuza games only had Japanese voice acting. And honestly, the English voice acting is not bad in this game. If you're I don't want to say Yakuza purist that only play these games with Japanese, that's fine as well, but don't knock the English voice acting of this game. The English voice acting is phenomenal in this game, with a great cast of characters and everything. It's fantastic. Play it how you want, but don't be like, oh, you're playing it in English? Oh, that's so bad of you. Don't be like that. It was like, oh, you're playing Japanese? Well, blah, 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 blah. Don't be that person. This game is fantastic all around, whether you play it as in Japanese or play it in English. And honestly, I can't wait to get back into this game so I can tackle the final Millennium Tower dungeon that's in this game, because boy howdy, that's where the big one is. That's where who I know is up there. I can't wait to try to tackle that for you guys in a future video. But anyway, guys, this is why Yakuza Like a Dragon, aka Yakuza 7, is number 2 of my top 10 games of 2020. Number 1, 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. Holy crap, this game. I feel like I can't really talk too much about this game without accidentally spoiling it. This game's narrative alone is something I have never seen done before. This game's narrative is kind of all over the place, but in a good way. This narrative is, you play as 13 different characters, which that itself would be like, oh my god, the narrative will be so confusing. But they make it so there's a list of where you can see all the events when they happen in order. And yes, they happen in order. I can't really say too much about this game without spoiling it. One thing I will say about this game is I feel like this game is definitely fell under a lot of people's radars. This game is phenomenal. This game is fantastic in terms of everything. The story is amazing, and it's done in a way, like I said, that is done in a way that I've never seen it done before. And even other game developers have praised how this game has followed its narrative. I said it earlier in this video, it's a damn shame that this game did not win Best Narrative of 2020, when it obviously should have. This game's narrative alone, just the concept of it alone, deserves that reward. This game, I feel like it didn't get enough press by Sony and Atlus, and that's a shame, because this is only so far only available on the PlayStation 4. So you'd think Sony would be pushing for it more. Unfortunately, they haven't. And Atlus, the publishers of this game, I feel like should have been pushing it more. It's made by Vanillaware, which that alone is so phenomenal. This game is fantastic. The way that the voice acting is done in this game is phenomenal too, and how the English dub came about is a miracle. Seriously, look that up. Here's a short version of it. All the voice actors had to record it at home because of COVID going on. everyone had to record their voices at home, and then they all had to send it to the voice editor or whatever it's called, and they had to like make it a way that made it sound like it was done in a professional booth. And by God, it's phenomenal. This game will have your head spinning in the best possible way. And the good news about this game is there's no wrong or right way to play this game. Like I said, you play as 13 different characters. And now they all don't unlock at the beginning. During the prologue, you unlock 5 of them, and then you can start back to whoever you can as long as they're not locked. Eventually, you'll reach a progression during the story where they get locked for what other reason and be like, oh, locked until you see this other character's events, or locked until you do a certain battle, which that's another thing too. The gameplay, the actual battle sequence of this are not that hard either, and they're quite enjoyable, especially since it has 3 difficulties. It has an easy, normal, and intense mode. So you can play it at any difficulty you want with no punishment, and it doesn't hinder anything. It's not like, oh, if you play it on easy, well, you won't get this log or something that tells you about this thing. No. All you gotta do is get the S rank bonus and get the extra bonus objectives completed in order to unlock some more archive info. This game is phenomenal, and it's unfortunate that I feel like it fell under a lot of people's radar. This game is definitely a big dark horse, and it's a phenomenal game, and I feel like this game deserves so much more love. And I said before, and I'll say it again, there is no right or wrong way to play this game. You can focus on one, if you really want to, you can just focus on one character. Although like I said, there will be a point in time where that character's progressions will get locked behind something. So then you either have to play a different character or go into battle to get mystery points in order to unlock some of the archives that get unlocked too. I can't sing the praises of this game so much. I honestly can't really think of anything bad about this game. You may think that like, oh, it doesn't make sense at some point, but then eventually when you get further in and then you look at that list of the event archives, you'll be like, no, it all makes sense. And that is the beauty of this game. That is why this game is my top #1 game of 2020 of just that concept alone. And of course, everything else is just the cherry on top. Like I said, the voice acting is phenomenal. The characters, the art design, everything about this game is just, it checks all the boxes. There will never be a game like this ever again, especially the narrative. People will try to probably copy it in some shape or another, and they may succeed in doing an okay job, but I don't think they'll do as great as a job as Vanillaware did with 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. And that is why this game is my #1 of games of 2020. Well, guys, there you have it. That has been my top 10 games of 2020. I'll be honest, there was a lot of games that I did play that were originally on this list, but then eventually I either played other games or I really rethinked of how I want to structure this list, and I made it this way possible. Again, this was just my opinion. It had no other influences whatsoever. It was just my enjoyment through all these games I played at. Now you're probably wondering, what about all these other games that you possibly played? I know you played other games like Marvel's Avengers. You played this game, you played that game. Why aren't these games on the list? Well, I'll talk about that in the next video of my honorable mentions. But guys, it was so hard to make this list, and I'll be honest, my top 3 kind of changed every now and then, although my #1 kind of was a solid #1 throughout. There was a couple of times where like, ooh, maybe this game would be #1, but there's always the one little thing that #1 had that I was like, I don't think anything could beat it, and it didn't. But don't get me wrong, this again is just my list, my thoughts and feelings about my top 10 games of 2020, and obviously everyone's is going to be different. So let me know what you guys thought about my top 10 games. Which one would you guys say would be your top favorite games of 2020? What was your #1? Where would you rank these games in your top 10? Where would you rank maybe your top 10 was maybe my 10 was your #1, and maybe my #1 was like your #5 or something like that. Let me know. And let me know if you guys will play any of these games. If you haven't played any of these games beforehand, but you're now be like, oh, maybe this game will be interesting to play. Let me know. They're all fun games. I'm going to say that again. These are all fun games, and they all have a good enjoyment. And I honestly can't wait to see what 2021 brings. I'm already excited for the first quarter. We're finally going to get Persona 5 Strikers. We're finally going to see what some of the new games coming out for the console, for the new gen consoles. I cannot wait to see what happens. And I honestly cannot wait to experience some of these new games, especially on the next-gen consoles, where we're finally going to get some games that are like, yes, these games were made just for these gen consoles. Well, I can't wait. I think 2021 will also be a good year for video games, but we haven't even gotten into the year yet, so let's not count our chickens before they hatch. So, but again, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and like I said, tell me what your guys' top 10 games were and how you would rank the games that I ranked. Thank you all so much for watching once again, and I'll see you guys next time.